Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for coming. I am Denis Samsonov. I am the moderator of the program at Business FM, and in the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, we shall talk about an important thing, a painful thing, is the changes, what has changed in IT security, in business that services IT and IB after February 24. In the podium, you can see Andrei Timoshenko, head of the Russian company Accenture, Michael Vasilevsky from DMS, Alexander Aksyutik, Positive Technologies, Sergey Guk, S7 Group, and Oleg Shalnov, Rosenergo Atom. To begin with, all the panelists will say just a few words about what was the greatest change in their life in the last 2 months and a half. Andrei. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to talk to you today, and I work in Accenture so far because in March Accenture announced its removal from the Russian market. We localized, we disconnected from the global company, and 95% of our IT was in the global cloud. Accordingly, we had to quickly generate our own IT infrastructure and protect it. This is the main change that took place in the company, and I can share my experience about the change. Inside the company, what did you feel? Now you are independent Russian company and not part of the global international brand. More freedom or what? Well, of course, a lot of things have changed. Every day we see some more changes, but the company has very well developed processes, and we just continue moving along those directions like a accelerated train. The rules have changed a bit. We build our business in the Russian market, and the rules have not just changed, they are in the process of change every day. We operate in the crisis conditions. We look at what is most important. We do consultancy, integration, development, everything related to IT, and all the limitations related to removal of international vendors affect us. The IT infrastructure was built on Russian solutions, and even when we had a choice whether to look at international vendors in cybersecurity, we decided to reduce risks, mitigate risks, and we work with Russian vendors only. And this is specifics. So we are going to discuss Russian solutions as well. What has changed in your company and what you do in the latest weeks and months? In the company, well, we had a lot of changes. We have a manufacturing holding, 15 factories. One of the factories in Ukraine, so we couldn't but change. We are part of big projects. Some of the projects are slowed down, others are accelerating. As for IT, the general situation is like that. We worked as usual. The foundation of our infrastructure and applications are in the same state as before. Some vendors withdrew, and if it doesn't affect us now, it will affect us sometime later, because we have a lot of development, technological development. They require specific systems, and those systems are most often non-Russian. Of course, we have some Russian analogs, but they are way behind. But in general, we didn't feel any shocks in IT. It's not the shock that we felt in 2017, when some people did something wrong in our network, but we did a good job after that, and now we feel comfortable and confident. Alexander, for you, I would like to change the question a bit. You represent services. You provide services to business, especially now. What has changed in customer requirements and your interaction with them? Actually, sanctions were imposed on us in April 2021, so we were a bit better prepared. We had more work because demand for our products and services grew up. We started selling more hardware and services. We hired more people. And that was the biggest problem. Logistics, delivery of servers, notebooks, that was the biggest problem, because we needed a lot. So the number of attacks increased. And we have been preparing, we had cyber exercises. We didn't feel anything bad, but we have much more work than before. Sergey, when preparing to this round table, Sergey told us that he used the previous months for replacing the old hardware. But why didn't you do it a year ago? As usual, we didn't have agreement from business. Everything is working. Why do you want to replace it? It's legacy, well, but it works. One day we're going to replace it. Fortunately or unfortunately, the situation changed. And we closed quite a number of gaps. When the company takes a decision, is security important? I mean, data security. Well, I think so. We all realize that all the risks that were hypothetical now, that happened once a year, now they happen every day. So, yes. And also one more question. You are the only person here who offer mass services. You work with millions of people. How more difficult it is to work with them now? It's difficult, but there is nothing that we were not prepared for. Mass large-scale services faced problems before. Now it doesn't happen once every month. We have it on a regular basis, every day.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Oleg.
Изменилось ли что-то в вашей работе?
Has anything changed in your work, Rosenergo Atom? Security have always been a priority for you. Do you feel additional threats now? Good afternoon. Yes, that is true. Sorry?
Да, действительно, Денис.
Yes, Dennis.
Прежде всего, безопасность.
Security is paramount. Safety and security first. It's our slogan. Rule number one in nuclear industry.
Холдинги.
Not only in our nuclear power division, but in all corporation that we belong to.
Вот теоретически,
Theoretically, from the viewpoint of data security,
более тревожно.
we see more threats,
Когда был пересмешка,
more insecurity.
количество атак на инфраструктуру было 6.
Before, we had about 6 attacks per second.
Где-то в конце февраля, в начале марта, где-то на первой неделе,
Early in March,
90 атак всего.
we had 90 attacks per second.
Не расстраиваться, считать не
I
будем.
said, okay, let's not count anymore.
Ну, как просто в разы, да, если не на порядок.
So the number of attacks grew up
Пришлось,
drastically.
соответственно, совместно с IT, мне,
Together with IT,
наверное, повезло, да,
I was lucky because I am responsible for security and IT together. From IT, from the IT and security people rebuild business processes. When we deploy a system, when we
некоторые вопросы
well,
закрыли и сказали нет.
we
Вот как
closed some of the ways and say no, this is out of the way. We just cut it off.
IT,
In IT,
уход крупных
withdrawal of large vendors,
железных вендоров, да,
hardware vendors,
накладывает, конечно, дополнительные
imposed additional workload, caused additional anxiety.
проблемы.
Of course, we are trying to solve those problems. As for the software, we were quite serious about import substitution by 2022.
Порядка 60.
About 66% of users work in Astra Linux.
На
I talked
Digital Week
to colleagues at Digital Week that
100% импортозамещения.
100% of import is substituted in the area of digital security.
Импортозамещение.
So import substitution is what we need, and we need it fast, and it exerts additional pressure on us because not all the software can be replaced quickly at once. So we have to do it step by step,
Этот процесс
and
сделать так, что
we need to do it in such a way as
вот это
to facilitate business. Business should not suffer. So you touched an important point, withdrawal of Western technologies and services. Which technologies, products and services were the most painful? Which was most difficult to replace? What is our biggest problem now?
Кто готов? Я даже...
Is anyone ready? Yes, you're welcome.
Ну, давайте.
Let me
С точки зрения софта
software
для авиакомпании
for the air company,
бесконечная IT-вивисит
of course,
продолжалась где-то
it's IT replacement
именно специфических
vendors were moving away a very specific system, fuel calculation, bye-bye. You have to find analogs which were more or less known, but you have to shift every day a new shift, every day a new withdrawal.
с точки зрения софта,
Anyway, every day new replacement. As for hardware,
сеть,
network equipment,
сервера,
servers are more or less available, but high performance network equipment from the viewpoint of security and backbones, that will be the biggest problem.
Александр, насколько вы в компании справляетесь
Alexander,
с тем, что
how well do you cope with fulfilling your obligation
зарубежных
when Western services withdraw?
проблем?
We didn't face any big problems. Zoom replacement was the most difficult, but we found a Russian replacement. It's the only one. We have a green company and we cannot say use this, you don't use that. Our people, our employees must say that this is really good. Zoom was the leader and replacement was difficult, but we found a good solution. Our infrastructure, servers and storage, network, well, we didn't deploy any specific systems. Our ERM and CRP systems were Russian-based, so we started preparing long ago. Michael,
Было ли что-то,
was there anything that you were afraid of, that someone is going to withdraw, but there was nothing difficult to replace it? Maybe you relied too much on some product, but when the product disappeared, you didn't see any difficulty. We use a lot of products. First of all, it's very difficult to replace the products which has a lot of R&D components, calculation, pumping, so we need serious calculations. Withdrawal of vendors didn't stop our processes. Of course, we are not going to get new versions of several programs, but it will affect us in a year, 2 years, 3 years. We don't know what we are going to do then, but we shall wait and see. But the systems that require continuous operations were not critical for us. Security before checkpoint withdrawal worked well, and we have to support it, otherwise it makes no sense. So we didn't have any significant problems there. Naturally, we have to install local products because we look into the future, and maybe we have to react. We shall have to react quite quickly.
вы в компании,
You said,
прошу прощения, Андрей,
Andrei,
вы уже сказали,
you said
компании
that you are responsible for analysis of the Russian services, Russian software, to look for analogs and alternatives to withdrawing technologies. And what did you see? How wide is the choice? How good are the alternatives?
Ну, смотрите, у нас
Well, look,
был день X,
we had an X day when we were disconnected from all global services,
2500 ноутбуков, которые
and
просто в кирпич.
2,500 notebooks were disconnected. We had a crisis management team. They touched business, infrastructure, security, and they analyzed analogs for everything that we used before.
Это время было очень короткое.
And we didn't have time at all, and we often chose the products and services by marketing,
Часть решений
not by deep analysis.
продержимся.
And we installed some of them, and we're going to work with them for about 6 months, and then we have to improve them or replace them.
Вот как бы мое такое, знаете,
It's my emotional opinion. It's a choice without choice. Very often we have just one alternative, not two, not three, and those people realize that they are the only choice and they can dictate their conditions.
разработали.
Even when we developed certain security requirements that we are going to customize for different solutions,
Те, которые считают
the companies that are alone in the market, they are not ready even to discuss those requirements.
там надежно.
They say we sold it, so use it as on an as-is basis. It's one of the problems that we have to do something about. We
Клиентам
usually develop a set of requirements, and when we develop a custom product and we positioned it that our product is 100% secure. We used secure programming tools, we analyzed we did vulnerability tests.
с одной стороны
And this is a problem now. On the one hand, we can continue using foreign solutions that are not going to be renewed
мы переходим на российские аналоги.
and shift to Russian analogs, which are not checked for security at all. Alexander, do you agree to what Andrei said?
В отношении, скажем, определенного скепсиса
He was a bit skeptical about security requirements and
которые сейчас предлагаются.
matching those requirements. Yes, the problem exists because we have to find for replacement. The number of attacks grew up, and we need secure products. Russian products have problems with that. Of course, functionality is there, they can do the job, but if security is one of the top requirements, so it's very difficult to satisfy that requirement. We check our products, such products, and our experts said that we didn't see a less secure product before. I tell them, you didn't see all the Russian products. Maybe you will see a worse product in future. But after we find vulnerabilities, if there are some critical vulnerabilities, we return the product to the vendor. Many of them close the vulnerabilities and ask us to recheck it. Of course, if it is not related to architecture, for example, the second factor is not supported and the vendor doesn't want to close that vulnerability, well, why does Russian software so weak? What is the reason? If we do have a good area in IT in Russia, it's security. We have more than 1, 2, 3 companies here who do it professionally, and now I see that Russian products are insecure. One of the colleagues said that security requirements were theoretical. Now they are practical. That is one of the basic reasons. Companies are young, products are young, and requirements are new. They didn't see any such requirements before, because our products, internal products, run through pin tests. Other companies don't do that. I think it's a complex story. It will be changed. We try to help our vendors. We have even solutions that help to make better products. Instead of paying for the license, we offer a service saying that for a certain time we are going to audit your product, install a solution that will make your product more secure, will tell you about your vulnerabilities. Usually we take money for that, but we can offer such services on a barter basis. What about you? What about Russian analogs? What were the difficulties? What were the good things?
По безопасности.
Well, for security, it was easy because
Многоэшелонная оборона.
we held multi-layered security, so it was just a requirement for us to make one circuit purely Russian. So it gave us no pain. But how we were selecting, I'll be frank, in terms of hardware, it was just whatever was available. Because when it became clear that the situation was only going to exacerbate in terms of hardware, so the most important thing was to go as fast as possible to create some stock.
Специфическому софту
For specific software, everything's quite easy. We have a lot of expertise running such systems. So we were selecting everything that was a close match. And developers are actually much more flexible. They're prepared. It's just they hadn't had a market like that before because all large business was focused on the Western products because the wheel has been the bicycle has already been invented, and why to do it again? But now we're going through all this way. We're together with these companies. Well, maybe it's not a long time that it has happened, but you've already felt some dynamic in terms of attitude to you from Russian customers. Are you prepared to go your half of the way in price? Well, for prices, no. But for flexibility, well, the important thing
мощность.
is that the capacity, the development resources are in short supply. So one has to keep up with what you haven't had for 10 years in 3 months. And unfortunately, there are no miracles of that kind. Oleg, you mentioned this, but it's also common knowledge.
Давно
Your company has been doing import substitution for a long time. So there are companies that only got to grips with it this year. How far away have you moved on the way to install Russian similar products? What's missing yet? Look, in terms of software, some dry facts. I already mentioned more than 23,000 workstations run a Russian operating system, Astra Linux. About 68% of all the workstations. We adopted back in 2020 a concept of import substitution, and so all the new solutions have been purchased since then in terms of software being substituted. What's a concern to me is that we don't really have a heavy-duty ERP system in the country. That's, as we say, a medical fact. Same thing or something close to that. So there's no heavy-duty EM. So these two subjects are to be addressed at the federal level. In terms of hardware, of course, it's already been mentioned here. It's telecom. It's going to cover us all very soon. I mean, heavy-duty telecom. But in terms of, I don't want to dramatize, But for your understanding, you have to understand that the x86 architecture is soon going to become completely unavailable. Well, I understand that we can do gray imports, but the whole country may not survive based on gray imports of the x86 architecture. We've already tested ARM-based workstation. The technology of the CPU is Baikal. Well, there are problems with the CPU. And by the way, the CPU is quite good. The benchmarks say it's good. There are problems. So going from the CPU to the machine, there are quite a lot of items on the way. And apart from the fact that the motherboard has also to be modified to fit the CPU, we don't have memory chips, we don't have hard drives. Well, Craftway, but it's just a small part. Then the operating system. The operating systems are there. They're good. Astra Linux runs okay. But for application software, it's not available. And this is exactly what needs to be addressed in the first place, which we have started to. I had a similar problem in 2020 when we were migrating to Astra Linux, and there was no software for Astra Linux. Now we've turned around, and I'm hoping that the same turnaround will happen either with regard to the ARM architecture or X5. Colleagues, I'm sure not only the level of attacks has changed in your work, not only the situation with technologies, but also the relationships within the business have changed. So I'd like to ask Alexander, over the past few months, has it become easier to talk about information security with business, about its importance, about the need to implement better and more powerful solutions? Look, we've never had problems about this. We have our own approach, IB 2.0, which means, which says that the CEO is the ultimate responsible person for security. If some money is stolen from the financial director's account, CFO's accounts, it's not security services problem, it's CFO's problem. And to help them solve this problem, there are partners and suppliers who make sure that it doesn't happen. IT has certainly become more important. The risks, because the risks that have emerged are about business disruption. So in this sense, yes, the attention from business has grown up, and the preparation for events that concern business has also become important. As to the interaction with information security, well, nothing's changed. We always check what we have, regardless of what we have inside. We run external pen tests with motivated people, and if we have any problems, they are immediately exposed. Mikhail, are you prepared to share at which level the critical solutions about information security are taken in your company, and has it become to make these decisions recently? Let me repeat myself. All these changes did not happen recently. They happened in 2017, where all these Petya and Misha things arrived. They also affected us. So we ran an audit at that time, which shows a strategy. We implemented some projects. It took us several years. And everything that needed to be instituted in terms of management, communication, and security, we've done all that. So over the past 2 or 3 years, we've been just fine-tuning what we had already had. And what happened on the 24th of February and after that, so largely speaking, it hasn't made us change anything in this schematic. Everything happened earlier. Andrei, your company is quite young. Perhaps you've already started some projects So do you feel a change in the attitude toward security in the company?
Ну, здесь есть несколько
Well, there are several points here, several directions,
да, мы
such as when we started to get localized,
бизнес,
of
IT,
course, business, IT, and security all tried to address their own objectives. And those who organized this process, they were trying to achieve some synergy. But one way or the other, business tried to make it so that the services that they needed for work should be launched first. IT were trying to do the same for business, but also to make sure that it runs smoothly. And we from security were trying to make it all secure, even though a short lag of time was needed. But of course, the cyber culture level in our company was quite high. There were moments when business was coming to us with questions. For instance, they started a certain service about employee personal data, so they started asking how safe it was. So they were acting proactively, and it resulted in a constructive dialogue. But nevertheless, one has to understand that every function
вот в момент кризиса
in crisis time is solving its own problems, and sometimes it doesn't think at all about the goals and objectives of the guy next door. So quite often, what was very important for us is that the top manager who created the working groups himself took part in the work of these working groups, overseeing certain lines of business, and in a certain sense it allowed us to achieve a balance between the speed and reliability and safety. This said,
ну, как бы такое мнение,
there is also an opinion that roughly there are two types of companies. The companies that have already been attacked, so that they have real-life experience in that, and companies that have not yet been attacked, so who are not yet exposed. So the second type of companies are, of course, more inert. They perhaps are waiting for a large incident to happen to them. And it's more difficult to push your security concept in their business. But in the first type of companies, those who have already felt the brunt of the attacks on their business, on their money, so in those cases, the management is also has a vested interest in motivating everyone. I would just like to add that for companies of the same type, it would be extremely useful to order pen testing services, because I already know quite a lot of colleagues who say, we're fine, our systems are protected, it's difficult to hack us. It's an illusion that can easily be broken when you get reports from motivated white hats and pen testers who got inside the system, get the main administration authority, and can do after that whatever they want. After that, talking to people who've experienced this themselves is much easier. So they're more prone to change their processes. Colleagues, I only have time for one brief question, and I'll ask each one of you. What have you learned over the past 3 months, both personally as a professional and your structure, your organization, the business where you work? In the first place, of course, in terms of safety. Oleg, let's start with you.
Наверное, быть
Well, perhaps
более спокойным.
to be more calm, to be calmer.
Пожалуй, все. Потому что
I guess that's it. Because on the whole, again, safety first,
безопасность
we had been
всегда
preparing, and we've also analyzed our work from the security perspective. So you just need to be calm, and
в некоторых случаях
in certain cases,
быть с коллективом.
to be with the team, to spend more time with the team.
Непростое время.
This is not an easy time to do that.
Сергей,
Sergey,
поддержу.
I will support my colleague, in his saying that people are the most important thing. And perhaps as a leader,
Стали проходить по вот всем стадиям.
they started to go very fast through all these stages up until the commissioning.
Отрицание, торг, вот это.
No, acceptance, actually. Denial, bargaining, and then acceptance.
Некоторые вещи
Acceptance regarding any question. Well, there are certain things that are no way for us to affect. So the faster we get to the acceptance phase, the faster we'll get restructured. So this work under heavy load that has grown in terms of the number of attacks happening more frequently, has it added skills to you? It's added skills of prioritization, I would put it this way. Well, so far, I don't know.
мы не видели прям сверх.
So far, we haven't seen some super techniques.
Именно пытаются
But
собрать количеством.
well, people are trying to, win by numbers rather than quality. Okay, thank you, Alexander. Maybe calmness, but it appeared a bit earlier. We've tested this all on ourselves, and when it became clear that the shutting down of Western services is not going to shut down the operation, that was a very important thing. An important story is about the autonomous Russian internet. We ran an exercise in February, and it turned out that there were some problems in the infrastructure. For instance, the DNS, not the right DNS was used in certain systems. Well, perhaps providers do quite a good job of using the DNS systems. And second was certificates, because in Russia there are no certificates that could be taken account of by all the. But things are evolving. Russian certificates have appeared, and I think the main risks have been removed. And the exercises has shown that the company is working, it can function without access to foreign IP addresses at all. Well,
скажем так, немножко сместили.
I'll say that the accents has shifted a bit. The focus has shifted. IT management also takes a role of educational activities, becoming a tutor for other employees. But now what's important is the time. So perhaps rather than focusing on the speed of making certain action, to think about what measures has to be taken. And this applies to all sorts of employees, from the shop floor to the top leadership. We understand this, but not everybody does, and people are just afraid to ask. So this is why it's all important. Andrei, the company that's still called Accenture, but that has already become a Russian company, has it had the time to acquire new skills and new experience to start doing something over the past 3 months? Well, the most important thing that I would derive from the past 3 months is the flexibility and the capability to adjust to new conditions very fast. Initially, myself and my team have been dealing with customer services, and so we come to our customers and try to organize information security either separately or as part of more comprehensive projects, IT projects, I mean. And when we had to disconnect from the global company, it's quite natural that in Russia we had a small team, and we practically did not have our own information security. And myself in particular had to combine the roles of not a CIS. In my understanding, a CIS is a person who is doing management of this in an operational kind of way, but a person who builds the internal security. Same applied to my team. It appeared that the consultants who would come to our customers explaining them how to build information security correctly, they started to build it at their own resources. It was a serious test for them. a test for their experience and knowledge, whether they were saying the right things to all our customers. And here, what helped us was the exposure of our consultants to all the different projects that they gained over a few years.
И вот эта насмотренность
And this exposure allowed us rather to reflect on what needs to be done now, but to implement some specific things. And another point,
как консультант
we as consultants have also always been focused on building processes.
в вторую очередь на автоматизацию.
And secondly, on the automation of these processes using security, information security tools. And when we understood that when you start focusing on the process, you understand that the primary thing is to build this process and then to take in automation. But it can also only be done if you've already covered the previous step. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. I see there's time for another replica. Alexander. Yes, just a final thought. I understand it a lot better about the Russian market of IT solutions, and there are really real gems there. And it's good that we've got this pretext to talk about that. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for the exciting and sometimes unexpectedly direct conversation. I suggest that we give a round of applause to all the participants. Thank you very much. It's great that you've been with us.